YouTube
we love you.
On 1620 The Zone.
I mean, let's think about that word right there, prime time. That means you don't even get to work in daylight hours because it's insulting that you would be on in the morning.
Nate Clouse.
Nebraska has done a great job kind of laying out everything on the table. I mean, they've shown their cards to both these kids.
Because he's that great. He's that legit. He is the greatest in history, period.
#blessed. The clouds are starting to clear up in terms of his recruiting process.
Nate Clouse.
Boom, roasted.
And for the first time, he joins us in our virtual studio on Stibbs TV. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, with that god-awful White Sox hat. Look at that. Oh. And
you can put it on the ball.
Yes.
he's got his Hawk bobblehead. All I can counter with in the moment is my
John picked himself out.
well, I can't see the things. There it is. There's the Cubs cup. That's all I got for you.
I was like, oh my gosh, he kicked himself out of his own video stream.
I could just kick myself out. But Nate, how are things? As we were talking off the air right before we went on, you're 2 weeks ahead of all of us because of the illness. So you're like 2 months into this ordeal. You look good for a guy who's been stuck at home for 2 months.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. But yeah, I'm 2 months in, or closing in on 2 months in on this whole deal. And like I was telling you guys, I'm over it. I'm ready to get back to normal. At first, it was kind of cool seeing the kids more and having them around more and everything. But as much as I love my kids and my wife, I'm ready to go back to the way things were.
And Nate, you were the only one that would work from home, right? So you had the whole house to yourself, and now you have nothing to yourself.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I had the whole house to myself every day, and the way I operate, I like to have things kind of quiet, and I can concentrate. And when I have constant chaos around, I don't necessarily like that too much, and things have been constant chaos for about 2 months now.
Yeah, Nate Clouse, HuskerOnline.com, our recruiting analyst, joining us here. We're live on Stibbs TV if you want to watch along with us. June is usually a pretty good month for commits because you've got, obviously a lot of camps and things like that. But we've talked about this in the past, Nate, with the camp schedules up in the air. And at the very least, they're going to be limited or maybe even canceled. Should we expect like the same June bump in commits?
I think everything's dependent upon visits in June. I don't think that we're going to see camps happen necessarily, but I think if they're able to take visits, we could possibly see a huge jump in commits that month of June because I mean, let's face it, these guys have been stuck at home for the better part of 2.5 months by the time the dead period ends on March 31st right now. And I think if things open up for the month of June where they're able to take those unofficial and especially the official visits, I think we could see a huge run on commits in the month of June, maybe more than what we typically do see.
Nate, within the last couple of hours, we have learned that Noah Vedral will no longer be with Nebraska. Does that change a whole lot in terms of recruiting the quarterback room? I mean, they're losing some depth. They're losing some starting experience and playing experience. What does that mean for the 2021 class, if anything?
Yeah, I don't know how much it really impacts the 2021 class. They would like to take at least one quarterback every year. And so, I think it probably maybe makes them put a little bit more emphasis on taking a guy this year. Whereas if there was ever going to be a year where they could skip taking a quarterback, I think it may have been this year. But I still think they ultimately would like to take a quarterback every cycle, and losing Vedral kind of opens up some space there. Now, I think the big question is, okay, is it worth taking a quarterback for 2021? Or is there another position that we could maybe benefit more from taking in this class if it's not a quarterback? I think that's what it comes down to maybe because at the same time where they'd like to take a quarterback every cycle, I don't think that they're in the market to take a guy just to take a guy. So if there's another player out there at a position of need where they would like to add instead of a quarterback, then we could still see them do that. This is not a particularly surprising thing, is it, Nate, in terms of Vedral's decision today? I don't think so. And not to say it wasn't an easy decision on his part, But I do think that this is something, you know, I've had conversations with people about it. Like, hey, could we see something happen here? You know, depending on what happens in the spring. Obviously, the spring didn't happen, but I do think the writing was kind of on the wall that, you know what, it's a packed room. His eligibility is running up. He's getting close to graduating, and so, you know, he would be able to make another move without having to sit out a year. And so it might make sense for him to do that. And obviously today is the day that we learned that he was going to do that. And you know, and unlike a lot of quarterbacks out there that transfer, he's got plenty of film. You know, he played at UCF, he played at Nebraska, obviously. And so he's got some film out there. So there's going to be plenty of schools out there that are interested in bringing a guy like Noah Vedral into their program, I think.
Nate, looking back to last night, Nebraska picked up another commit, Branson Yeager, an offensive tackle out of Utah. A few things stood out to me, first and foremost, certainly his size. Like you pointed it out in a tweet last night. You know, you look at what it's been like over the last couple of classes, and so much height, especially. Do they see that height and then think that they can just add so much more weight because the frame is already there? What do you think it is about these tall guys that they've really started leaning on over the last few years?
Yeah, I think there's two frame of thoughts there. I mean, one is, first and foremost, they want big bodies up front, big physical athletes up front. And so you can either go out and get a guy who's 6'8", 330 pounds like Branson Yeager is right now, or you can go out and get a 6'7", 250-pound guy like we saw them do with someone like Matthew Anderson out of Louisiana a couple cycles ago and build that guy up. Now, it's going to take a couple years to build up a guy like Matthew Anderson, whereas it may not take quite as long for someone like Branson Yeager, who maybe only needs to lose a little bit of weight before they get him to where he wants to be. But bottom line is they want big, strong, physical athletes up front, and that's what they've added. In adding someone like Branson Yeager, I mean, he certainly fits that mold. He's a very, very athletic guy for as big as he is, and someone who's just kind of scratching the surface of his potential overall. He plays in a small classification in Utah, and he will readily admit to you that, hey, I've got a lot of work to go, especially in his pass blocking, where he is certainly at his best when he's as a run blocker. Has some work to do as a pass blocker, but like I said, he fits the mold of what Nebraska wants, and he's kind of a throwback, tough guy. You know, he's a hunter and outdoorsman. So this kind of fits your throwback Nebraska offensive lineman.
And Nate, kind of going back to one of the things that John asked you about a little bit earlier, you wrote in the story about him that Nebraska was set to host Yeager for an unofficial visit about a month and a half ago on March the 14th. Of course, that was canceled as everything happened around the country. What do you think that will mean now moving forward? This is kind of a theme for us, right? Whenever we talk to you every week, what's going to happen when players don't get a chance to take visits and then commit to a school? What do you think that will mean for holding on to that commitment moving forward?
You know, I don't think it'll mean a whole lot. I think Yeager went through the process here over the last month and a half, where things really heated up for him. He found out, you know, what coaches he had a connection with, what coaches that he really related well with. And you know, he's been to the Midwest before. He's got family in Kansas. And he always felt comfortable here in this area of the country. And I think that along with the connection that he developed with Greg Austin and Tony Tuioti and of course Scott Frost, made him feel very comfortable in the fact that, hey, I can make this decision and go ahead and commit. I'm not going to renege on that. When visits open up, I'm not going to be tempted to go and visit other places around the country, because he pretty much had offers from every Power 5 conference in the country. And so, you know, and I don't think Nebraska would have taken this commitment if there was a chance that he was going to open up and start to take visits once things surrounding the coronavirus kind of slowed down or relaxed a little bit. So I think he's a solid get and a solid commitment for Nebraska, and someone that the Huskers are very happy to have.
Nate Clouse of HuskerOnline.com joining us here on Unsportsmanlike Conduct, and we're streaming also live on Stibbs TV, our YouTube channel. You know, back on the idea of June visits, you know, we've heard so much from the administrators in college sports that we can't play ball unless we have kids on campus. And I realize that the summer classes aren't as well as populated as the fall and the winter classes, but have we heard much on the sentiment of, well, if we can't have students on campus for class in the summer, then we also can't have official visits. Have you heard anything in terms of, where we kind of stand on that?
Yeah, I've not heard any talk like that as of now. Now, obviously, having practice with your student athletes and having recruits visit are two different things, I think. And so I think that we're more likely to see visits take place without the student body being on campus than we are for practice to take place without the student body being on campus. But I do think that we probably will see official visits happen in the month of June. And to me, the bigger question might be, will they extend that period into July? Because we've missed out now on all of April and all of May with official visits that could have taken place. And so if their dead period is lifted at the end of May, like we think it will be, will they kind of recalibrate the recruiting calendar and let these guys take more official visits before their senior season starts? I think that could be the bigger question.
Nate, going back to the draft for a moment, we talked about it a little bit earlier in what you say. How much does that type of stuff matter for recruiting? We always have these ideas, kind of buckets of like, well, hey, relationships are a huge part and winning football games is a big part. The NFL draft on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is that? Because obviously Nebraska has struggled mightily at getting players into the league over the last few years.
Yeah, I think it's important, and it can't be downplayed completely. Now, you can make it way more important for you if it benefits you, and you can downplay it quite a bit if it doesn't benefit you. Someone like Ohio State, all they have to do is send out a text to all their top guys and say, "Hey, are you watching this? If you are, or if you aren't, you should be, and you should come join us so you can be the next guy being drafted in the first round." If you're somebody like an offensive lineman at Iowa, they can play that up to their advantage, and they have. They landed 2 really good offensive linemen right after the draft or during the draft, and I don't think that was necessarily a coincidence. Now, if you're someone like Nebraska, I think you can kind of downplay it a little bit and say, hey, look, these weren't our guys. The guys that were eligible for the draft this year, they weren't our recruits. Now you only have, one more year of that to do that. And so you better start producing if you're going to kind of use that as your crutch. But to say that it's not important, it would be ridiculous. I do think that it does play a role in recruiting. Now, much like the facilities or the uniforms talk, how much of a role? I don't think it's ever really the deciding factor, but definitely I do think that it will help you if you are putting guys in the league consistently.
And once again, Nate, it was validation of your industry and your site Rivals that the percentage of first round draft picks who were 5 stars, 4 stars, how, it continues to correlate that the star rankings. And I think we're getting a little less of the criticism of the star ranking system than we did, say, 5-10 years ago. But the continued validation of, hey, this is good talent. And now it's showing in the draft. It's a tip of the cap to the guys in your business who analyze these guys and put a lot more time looking at the film than I think a lot of the critics will give you credit for.
Yeah, I think it does, and there's definitely a correlation there. I think people used to say, well, stars don't matter at all. Well, they do. I think what we've seen here recently is that they definitely do matter. Now, there's always exceptions to the rule. There are always players that fall through the cracks. But it definitely does matter. If you're ranked a 5 or a 4-star player, chances of you having success in college and beyond college are exponentially greater than if you're a 2-star or unranked or even a low 3-star type of guy. And I think every year our industry is getting a little bit more and more accurate with those rankings, and then we're probably going to see that continue. With the advent of Huddle and all this information that is available to everybody now, I think the chances of someone falling through the cracks now are far less than what they would have been 5, 10, 15 years ago.
He's a handsome man, even if he's wearing that ugly hat. Nate Clouse, HuskerOnline.com. Good guys wear black. Is that what the old saying was?
That's what they say.
That's right. Good guys wear black. I'm looking forward to like July and August when our teams are fighting it out and we can argue about them in division play. I hope it happens.
Yes,
I'm
it better happen.
I'm hoping it happens. Nate, great to see you. Thanks, and hope you and the family are doing well.
All right, thanks. You too, guys. Have a good one.
Thank
There
you,
he
Nate.
is, Nate Clouse of
Nate.
HuskerOnline.com. Now, if we can just get Sip and Robin, I think we would complete the cycle, right?
Sounds like Robin might be the most difficult, just with what he has
because
to do during the day.
the whole family and you know he having to take care of the kids.
Simple has no excuses though.
Yeah, and plus that Robin's always riding wildfire, you know, and that's kind of hard to hold a computer up. And
he's doing horsey things.
A lot of horse things. All right, we'll come back. We'll wrap up the program right after this on 1620 The Zone.
Bye, YouTube. Thank you.
Bye, YouTube.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I
And everyone here at Stibbs TV, I'd like to thank you for joining us.
Coming up next on Stibbs TV.